would like to direct your attention to my right. Our first responders, we have all of those represented here tonight. Thank you for all of the hard work that you do and going where nobody else will step in. I would also like to take a moment to recognize all of our veterans. If we have any veterans in the audience, please stand and be recognized. And I would also like to recognize Bill Morrell, our treasurer of our fair board. He will be going on the honor flight here in a few weeks.
Can I please ask you to stand, remove coverings, and turn and face the flag for the singing of our national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you, Ashley, for tonight's singing of the national anthem. Today we remember what tragically happened September 11th, 2001. The lives lost, the first responders who emerged in the accident. We will never forget what happened. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. All right. Good evening, everybody. I'm the Viroqua Fire Chief, Chad Buros. I was asked to come here tonight to talk about what 9/11 meant for myself on that day. I started thinking today how many members currently there are on our department actually on our department when it happened. There's only like 4 or 5 of us. So it means a little bit more probably to us because again we were in the service during that time. So here we are. Before anything, please join me in taking a moment of silence to remember those who lost their lives on September 11th, 2001, 23 years ago. Thank you. 23 years ago, I had only been on the department for 3 years at that point. Still learning the job, still finding my place and understanding what it meant to be a firefighter. What was my purpose? On September 11th, I learned what my purpose was, as did many first responders. The days, weeks, and months following that tragic day continued to show me why I was called to be a firefighter. The community showed me that first responders are the foundation to keep the community safe. All my fellow brothers and sisters, your first responders, dedicate their lives to all of you every day. That morning, 23 years ago, we lost 8 EMT paramedics, 60 police officers, 343 firefighters, and 2,997 civilians. There's also a K-9 that was lost. I might not have those exact, but those are pretty darn close. Beyond that, the number of first responders that were there on 9/11 that didn't pass away that day. We've lost more first responders that were there since that day than what had happened during the event, which is pretty sad. So they're continuing to die because of them being there helping, the hazards that they had breathed in, and so on and so forth. So, as I thought through what else to talk about, that number of first responders that lost their lives that day is equivalent to the number of all of our first responders in Vernon County. Within reason. There might be a few more in the county, so that's all of your police officers, all of your firefighters, all of your medical. It's like wiping all of them out in a couple minutes. So you can imagine that. Pretty sad. These responders live and breathe, willing and wanting to help their fellow neighbor. I don't know where we would be without all our amazing responders. I would like to thank the troops and first responders who help keep us protected. They're true heroes. Some might ask, what is a hero? What truly defines a hero? Nobody is born a hero. You choose to be one when you refuse to stand around and wait for someone else to step up. On September 11, 2001, the world witnessed as first responders, troops, civilians, and service animals stepped up to do everything and anything possible to protect and rescue victims that were tragically impacted by this horrific event. Those courageous first responders, troops, civilians, and service animals are heroes. We need more heroes like them. Over the past couple years, the amount of people willing to become volunteer firefighters and EMS have significantly decreased. We need your help to fill that gap. Consider joining your local fire and EMS group. You were born with the ability to change someone's life. Why not step up and join your local fire and EMS department? Thank you all for being here tonight, and help us remember we will never forget. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. That was a great talk. Thank you for letting us remember all of the first responders and everyone who reached out to help that day. Good evening. My name is Natalie Solverson, and on September 11th, 2001, just after 9 a.m. in Ithaca, New York, I walked with my supervisor from my work-study job at the Cornell University College of Agriculture and Life Sciences to the dining hall down the street. I had just started my junior year of college. I was scheduled to work there until about 11 o'clock that morning, when I planned to go home, pick up my suitcase, and catch a ride to the Syracuse airport on my way home to Vernon County to be here as Fairest of the Fair. I remember thinking that morning, wow, what a beautiful day to fly. So when Ann and I waited in the busy coffee line and we heard rumblings on the radio about a plane that hit the World Trade Center a few minutes earlier, we thought, that's weird. We thought it had to be a freak accident, small plane, maybe a news helicopter. We got our coffee and returned to the office, just turning our thoughts to the rest of the day ahead. We now know that it was American Airlines Flight 11 that had slammed in the North Tower at 8:46 a.m. Eastern. And I don't remember exactly when we learned about United Airlines Flight 175 hitting the South Tower. That happened at 9:03 Eastern, so it had to have been sometime shortly after we got back to the office. That also made it very clear that this was not an accident.
So events unfolded pretty quickly over the next hour. At 9:37 a.m., American Airlines Flight 77 dove into the Pentagon. 5 minutes later, the FAA ordered all planes to land immediately. At 10:03 a.m., United Airlines Flight 93 plowed into the soft ground of an old mine in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, thwarted by its passengers and surviving crew from its intended target of the United States Capitol. At the time, we didn't know that the crash of Flight 93 signaled the end of the day's attack. We waited on edge for something else to happen. It was evident that I would not be getting home for the fair that day, if at all. At some point during the morning, I called the fair office. And this was odd because I didn't hear ringing on the other end of the line after I dialed, but I heard some kind of background noise. I just chalked it up to some disruption in telephone service as a result of the attack, so I said, "Hello?" And the voice on the other end of the line responded, "Hello? This is Ken Deaver." And I said something to the effect of, "Ken, this is Natalie Walliser, and I'm not sure I'm going to make it home for the fair." So classes had not been suspended, so instead of going to the airport, I went to my scheduled lecture for the afternoon. Many of us, including the professor, sat in stunned silence. It also became clear to me that my disappointment at not getting home paled in comparison to the worries faced by many of my classmates. My situation was inconvenient, but some of them were facing potential personal tragedy. Cornell University is also the land-grant university for the state of New York. The College of Agriculture and Life Sciences is required to have at least 1/3 of its students from New York State. So my classmates grew up in New York City and its surrounding areas. Their family and friends were Manhattan bankers and brokers, Fifth Avenue advertising execs, members of the NYPD and the FDNY, people who worked at the World Trade Center. Many waited for updates, often for hours, as all the phone lines were jammed. And while no currently enrolled students were killed that day, 21 Cornell alumni perished, 9 in the World Trade Center and 2 on Flight 93. By midday on Wednesday, September 12th, it was obvious that planes, trains, or buses would not be a viable option for getting home in time for any part of the fair. I was also not yet old enough to rent a car, even if one for rent could be found in Ithaca. My parents discussed coming out to get me, but the 30-plus hour round trip seemed impractical. But it came up that a sorority sister I didn't know well was from Indiana, and even before the day's events, she had planned to hit the road early on Thursday, September 13th to visit her boyfriend at Ball State in Muncie. So this girl, who is now my good friend Allison, heard about my predicament and offered to give me a ride as far as eastern Indiana. This was all we needed to get a plan into action. Before I knew it, my dad and our neighbor Jeff Parr planned to meet us on Thursday afternoon in the middle of an Indiana cornfield to drive the rest of the way home for the fair. So I did make it back. On Friday, September 14th, we had a memorial service at noon as part of the National Day of Prayer and Remembrance. The fairgrounds were totally silent during that time, and that's something I don't remember happening before or since. Every September delivers beautiful, what they call severe clear days like this one, that bring back vivid feelings for me of sadness and uncertainty at that time. But I also think of the determination and the courage of ordinary people who stepped up on this day to help one another. So along this line, I want to leave you with a lesser-known story about 9/11. So given that Manhattan is an island, and that bridges, tunnels, public transportation were all shut down as a result of the attacks, the only viable route off the island for hundreds of thousands of people was by boat. So the Coast Guard put out emergency radio calls to all nearby vessels to help them evacuate from Battery Park near the southern tip of Manhattan Island. More than 130 vessels responded to the call, ranging from law enforcement boats to pleasure yachts to ferries to tugboats. And by the end of the day, they had evacuated an estimated 500,000 people, a maritime rescue larger than the World War II evacuation from Dunkirk. So this is one example of so many that day, of people meeting the moment and doing what was needed to be done without expecting anything in return. Ordinary people on what began as an ordinary Tuesday in September who accomplished something extraordinary. May we never forget. Thank you.
This is a song called There She Stands, and it was commissioned by George Bush right after 9/11 for Michael W. Smith to write. It basically talks about how our flag was resilient that day and stood through anything. So. When the night seems to say all hope is lost, gone away, but I know I'm not alone. By the light she stands. There she waves, faithful friends, shimmering stars, westward wind, show the way, carry me to the place she stands. Just when you think it might be over, just when you think the fight is gone, someone will risk his life to raise her. There she stands. There she flies, clear blue sky reminds us with red of those who died, washed in white by the brave in their strength. She stands. When evil calls itself a martyr, when all your hopes come crashing down, someone will pull her from the rubble. There she stands. We've seen her fly torn and tattered. We've seen her stand the test of time, and through it all the fools have fallen. There she stands by the dawn's early light, and through the night she stands.
Present. Hup. Order. Hup. Ready. Face. Forward.
All our guest speakers, the first responders, and the honor guard for being here today. Can we all give them one more round of applause? We want to thank you all for attending the 9/11 memorial service. Thank you.